welcome you. I will let you know that our reader tonight, our guest tonight, Jeff Friedman, will be reading. He has 7 collections of his work. He's appeared in several reviews and has won many awards. And you will see that in your program, and I invite you to visit his website. There's a lot in his background, and we're honored to have him. He has taught at Keene State College for many years. He lives in West Lebanon, New Hampshire, with artist Colleen Randall and their dog Ruby. Gotta love somebody who loves dogs. So I welcome you, and we have wine and cheese and grapes and a little something to eat after the program. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for that. Thank you for inviting me to read. Thank you for starting the series. And thanks for everyone for coming. I guess I'll start out by just saying that over the last 10 or 12 years, my writing has sort of taken a shift. I don't know how it kind of happened, and it was a strange thing. I was writing mostly all verse poems and kind of writing about family and work and politics. And all of a sudden I found myself, my work has always had a certain surrealism in it, but I found myself sort of beginning to kind of get tales or fables into the poems. And I'm not sure why that occurred, actually, some satire. And then it dawned on me that years ago, when I was a kid, that I used to write a lot of fables and mini tales on my own. And so it's kind of been a return to just, almost like childhood. So I don't know, somehow I got off into writing one, and then it led to another, then it led to another, and I was putting them in 1 or 2 books, just a few of them, and then finally I just did a whole book of them. I decided I'm going to just do a whole book of prose pieces. And the book, like I said, it's floating tales, and it contains mini tales, I'd say micro-stories, fables, parables, and hybrid pieces and comic sketches. And when I sent it out, I guess I called it, and I think it's prose poems. So that's the term I've used to discuss them. So I'm going to start reading I'm going to probably read a few new pieces too, and maybe 1 or 2 old ones, but I'm going to start reading some of the maybe comic pieces from this collection. All of you have been around here, and I'm sure you've probably had some contact with bears. Is that true? Maybe all of them. Yeah. Well, we have bears in our neighborhood all the time. I mean, not only have we had bears in our neighborhood, we have bears in our carport actually, and they've a family of bears. My wife came home one night, but we all came home, and one night she was walking outside and I heard her yell, and I came running out, and the bear had kind of actually come into the carport and feinted a charge at her, and we had our dog out there, and we sort of backed up, and it feinted another charge. I didn't know it was feinting a charge at the moment. We were pretty kind of scared, and then it kind of we saw the cubs go running down. So anyway, I just decided to write a bear love story, it's called Bear Fight, and like I said, all of you are familiar with bears, so you know that bears huff, not necessarily wolves. Bears huff, and they huff really loudly. Sometimes sounds like the whole neighborhood is having an orgasm when they huff. But okay, so Bear Fight. When Liza fell in with the bear, I was more than disappointed, as I had been in love with her since childhood. What's he got that I don't? I asked as we walked past the diner together. He's a bear, she said. She let go of my hand. He gets a little jealous when I'm out with my friends. Why do you want to be with a bear anyway? I asked. 2 teenagers pushed past us with their skateboards. Balloons floated above Main Street, announcing a sale at the furniture shop. Why do you want to be with me? She asked. We parted ways when the light changed, but later I went to her home dressed as a bear. She opened the door. Come in, she said, putting her arms around me. You don't smell like a bear, she said. Then in walked the bear with a fierce look on his face. He growled, and so did I. He cuffed me, so I cuffed him back. Then we grappled with each other, bear hugging, until Liza stepped in between us and held out her hands. I'm sick of bears, she said. Get out of here. I ripped off my bear mask. I'm not a bear, I said. The bear ripped off his. I quit this game, he said. I'm not a bear either. Liza removed her mask, and she wasn't Liza. We ran away as fast as we could. I made it back to my place and locked the door, turning on the outside light, but all night I heard her huffing. You know, the interesting thing about this thing, I was being interviewed about this poem a while back, and I was sort of thinking, well, what triggered this whole poem, and why did it write? You know, and I really couldn't think of it, so I started making something up, but it didn't dawn on me that when I was growing up, Woody Allen had a routine about hitting a moose and then putting it on the hood of his car and driving it, and the moose woke up, so he took it to a costume party, you know. So I think it may have been in the back of my mind also. I think it was in 8th grade, and my good friend was going out with this girl for about 4 days, who I thought was absolutely gorgeous, exquisite, and he left town, and I was kind of friends with her, and then we started making out, you know, and so it was like she was going out with me, and then my friend came back, and he was really pissed, and I remember going to her house with my good friend, and we were sitting there, we were having like a fight in front of her. And she said, you know, I'm sick. I'm going out with a basketball player. I'm sick of both of you. Get out of here. So I think that was like maybe the stimulus for this. And I didn't think about it till, you know, like just somewhat recently, actually. That might have been in the back of there. All right. Well, so I'm going to read another piece. And this is kind of about, you know how when anybody delivers the bad news to you, they always kind of try to make it sound like it hurts them more than it hurts you? That's what this is about. Difficult times. And actually, my work moved from, not to spend too much time talking about my work, but it moved from actually writing much more personally to an I that isn't me really necessarily. A lot of persona poems, and it just isn't me. It's like a lot of it's fictionalized. But I think some of this, you know, in this particular piece, it is based a little bit on an experience I had when, you know, several years ago. So, okay, and I'll just read it from there. I don't need to say anything more. Difficult times. The boss came in with his usual alacrity. Sorry, we have to let you go, he said. He held the door frame and hung his head as if stunned by his own revelation. When I got up to offer him my chair, he crumbled into it and began sobbing, the tears running down his red cheeks. I handed him my handkerchief, which he used to sop up the tears. Then he blew his nose, and the chair shot back into the wall. It's so hard, my job, he cried. These are difficult times, I answered, and patted his shoulder for support. He bent over as if he were going to be sick. I pushed the wastebasket under his face because if he made a mess, I was worried I'd be responsible for cleaning up. He coughed a few times and spit into it. I've been here for 10 years. Do you have to let me go? I asked. Suddenly, he fell on the floor, doubled up, a fierce pain in his gut. I called the infirmary, but the operator broke in to say that the infirmary had been shut down. My boss rolled back and forth as if in a seizure. He moaned so loudly he couldn't hear me repeat my question. So loudly, the floors and windows vibrated. When I pinned his shoulders, he went limp and his eyes rolled back. I couldn't hear his breathing. Firing me had killed my boss. How would I explain that to human resources? Then, miraculously, he came to, smiling and cheerful. You'll be missed, he said, and jumped to his feet, extending his open hand. This poem is kind of based on the idea that, you know, guys are always trying to solve women's problems. I don't know. So I wrote a poem that's kind of based on that idea. It wasn't, you know, and maybe it's after the fact that I'm saying this. Maybe I wrote it before I thought that, but anyway, I think it now. Okay, this is called Dragon. Kahane, our guest, disagreed with Greta over how best to cook chicken thighs, so she smoked him. The fire lasted only a few seconds, then burst into sparks. But it was enough to char the tablecloth and burn to a crisp the needlepoint on the chair. Greta, please, I said. We've got so few friends left. She aimed her fiery red mouth at me. Kahane wasn't my friend. She had a point. I had known Kahane since grade school, but she had only known him since we'd been living together 2 years. With her hot, fleshy lips, Greta was a great kisser, and she could do magic things with her tongue. But in recent months, she had grown impatient, dissatisfied with everything. I swept up Kahane and emptied his ashes into the trash. What's wrong, Greta? Tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm a dragon, she answered. Do I have to explain everything to you? My mouth is a flamethrower. That's not a problem, I said. You can control it. She looked so sexy in her purple crop top, beads glistening on her golden breasts. I wanted to hoist her off the ground, but when I made my move, the air exploded from her mouth. My beard crackled as I ran to the sink to put out the fire. Bad timing, she said, then stroked the dark red stubble on my blistered chin. Well, the next one I don't think I really need to explain. It's called Strip Poker, page 21. I don't have any tattoos, but there's a scene in here about tattoos. You know, I sort of want some, but you know, I'm a little afraid of getting them. You know what I mean? But strip poker. My lover shuffles the deck, fanning the cards into a bridge. The cards arc like a rainbow, then fly wildly through the air like fish hurling out of the water into the mouths of bottlenose dolphins that leap to catch them in their hungry mouths. The cards land on the table as full houses or runs of clubs. I take off my shoes, my socks, my sheriff's badge, while she leans in, giving me a peek at her breasts and her valley of cleavage, and a bead of sweat glistens in the shadow of the valley. I take off my shirt, my undershirt, all my chains, and my Jewish bling. What's next, she asked, as a royal flush shines on the table. I take off my jeans, and she loosens her waves of thick brown hair and removes the cream-colored blouse over her yellow crop top. Just to make you feel better, she says. We live in dress and layers, I think, but now there's not much between me and the world. You're a real hustler, I say, a card shark. More of a magician, she answers, and waves her hands over the cards. Presto, as they open on the table, 4 aces. Now I remove my striped boxer knits. She rotates her index finger in circles, and I do several full turns. Now what, I ask? Let's keep going, she says, and deals another hand. Then another and another, until off come the tattoos spreading across the floor. An orange crossbow, a wolf's head, a Moorish facade, 3 neon stakes dancing, a fountain of coins, the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in microscopic print, and a map of the 80s. She turns over the cards until I discard my costume of flesh, my bones, my fountains of blood, and step out of myself into air. One more hand, she asks. Okay, let's see here. All right, I might go to a couple of new ones and then shift gears, but let me see if I can actually manipulate this a little bit. I have a kind of crazy book club with a friend of mine who lives in New York named Charna Myers, and we do our book club on treadmills. And we often haven't been so great about reading the book, so that's kind of an interesting part of it too. We talk about recipes and all sorts of other personal problems as we're on the treadmill, and we have the book club. So this is about our book club. And we always make these long lists of books that we mostly don't get to. So we do get to some, though. Book club for Charna Myers. We make a long list of books and agree on a reading order. On Friday, we settle in for a nice discussion. Let me start over again. First of all, there's a character named DeVillo in here, totally made up. So you can't find him in a book, so don't ask me about it later that you want to read it because it's a made-up book. It'll sound so interesting to you, this book, that you'll want to read it and even buy 10 copies, maybe. Okay. We make a long list of books and agree on a reading order. On Friday, we settle in for a nice discussion. I really like the first paragraph, Charna says, having read only one paragraph. It tells me what the book will be about, and I learned so much about DeVillo. Yes, DeVillo, I say. He's not really in the book I read, but I like him too. She tells me that DeVillo wakes up to tea at 4 in the afternoon. A tea drinker and a late sleeper. DeVillo sounds charming. He sounds like Charna. I really like the cover of my book, I say, and the first sentence, which seems brilliant to me. There's a crow dead in the snow and a young boy standing over it. The death of the crow, Charna says, that's a bad omen. Does something bad happen to the boy? Though I've only read a single sentence of the book, I answer her question. I believe the boy faces adversity, but then surmounts all obstacles. And the crow presages bad and good in this case. I'm not so sure that her book can sustain my attention, as the main character doesn't get up till 4 and drinks tea slowly. Does the main character drink more tea or go back to sleep, I asked. He has a funny relationship with his wife and daughter, I think. Very funny. She pages through a book and finds a passage to read aloud. I page through my book and do the same. What should we read next, she asked. And should we try to read the same book this time? Yes, I answer, but let's do something shorter. I'm going to try this. I've never read this poem, and it's probably kind of on the dumb side, but okay. This is called Rerouting, and it has to do with, you know how Siri and Lex have kind of taken over our lives? So it's sort of about, yeah, Siri, exactly. So I'm going to read this, and I want to read, a friend of mine, Tim Mayo, came, and I happened to write a poem based on his life entirely. It's an autobiography. I mean, it's a biography of his life, you know. So this is called Rerouting. Siri orders me to turn left. So I turn left onto Siskine Street, and I'm driving through a gang war. As stray bullets knock on my back windows and ricochet off the car, I swerve to avoid a police tank coming at me. Bad decision, I shout at Siri. Quickest route, she replies. I floor it to get out of the line of fire, but there's a barricade up ahead. Get me out of here, I demand. Rerouting, she answers. Shifting into reverse, I back down the block again in the line of fire. Wrong way, she says. Rerouting. The bullets shatter the back window, and I drop to the floor. Take the wheel, I shout, and Siri commands a treacherous left and then a sudden right. She talks to the car as if it were a horse. I can hear the guns firing, but we may be out of harm's way, though I'm afraid to look. We go through several neighborhoods and wind up at a gas station. I fill the tank and get back in the driver's seat. When I put the key in the ignition, the engine turns on, yet the car won't go forward. I throw it in reverse, still no movement. Let me, Siri says, and gets the car on the road running smoothly, headed toward the highway. Don't touch the wheel, Siri says. It's mine now. Rerouting, I say. Well, this is the one to Tim. It's his biography. I have to say it's his biography. So I'm not even going to say much. I just know that you just should know that he does trapeze. That's all you should know. That's all you need to know about this. Okay. Man on the flying trapeze. He let go of the bar, somersaulting. Below, men held the net taut, and the crowd of eager faces looked up, expecting him to execute a perfect dive into it. Instead, the man somersaulted through space as if over solid ground. The men with the net ran after him. The crowd followed, shouting for the man to come down. The man somersaulted through swarms of bugs and clouds, over green fields until they turned to frozen ground and then to mud. He somersaulted through rain and snow, through smoke and dust storms. He almost hit an eagle whose angry beak gashed his leg. He broke apart a phalanx of geese. He somersaulted over towns, villages, and cities, over rivers, and then over oceans and continents. A world away, he kept somersaulting until the air seemed to give way beneath him, and he fell fast, too fast for his last thoughts, he thought. Closing his eyes, he plunged toward the earth. But before he could crash, the men with the net sprinted across open ground, centering it below him, and he bounced up and down with a big smile on his face as the crowd, out of breath after their long pursuit, clapped softly, worried there might be an encore. You got to be in shape to be at a Tim Mayo exercise session. That's all I know. All right, let's see. Let me do Buy Me a Horse. I'm doing this because my friend Roy and Charlotte, again, the same friends, I'm very close to them, and as a matter of fact, he's a very well-known jazz musician and composer, and I went down and performed with his group for a year or two. I'd go down like maybe once a month, once every 2 months, and we'd play at the Bowery Poetry Club or some music venue like the Stone, and I'd have to rehearse my poems with his group, and I've got almost no musical talent, as my guitar teacher would tell you. And, I'd have to try to do it, and he'd kind of work around me. The group was great. They would, but anyway, his kid, Gabe, is my nephew. And, like so many kids today, because I teach, they've got their parents wrapped around their, thumbs. And so Gabe is able to, whenever there's any sort of conflict or thing, he's able to go to the brink, to go to the edge. And so even though they have good intentions about giving discipline, they always kind of back off, whatever it is. So I kind of wrote this piece called Buy Me a Horse about that idea. Let's see, what page is it on? 30. Buy me a horse. Buy me a horse, our son chants, jumping up, and I'm speaking from their voice. Buy me a horse, our son chants, jumping up and down on the trampoline in the living room, his moosed colic grazing the ceiling. We say, no horse. For 7 days and nights, he slams doors, crashes into walls, breaks bottles, toys, vases, clay pots, dishes, and picture frames. But we don't budge. Then he puts on his prison stripes and refuses to eat, shouting, Attica, Attica. So we buy him a small horse. The horse sleeps with him in bed. He rides the horse to meals, to the bathroom, into the TV room. The horse lies down and watches TV with our son. They play video games together. The horse laughs when our son laughs. And we are glad our son is laughing, not crying or screaming. For hours each day, we clean up after the horse, scrubbing down the floors, disinfecting the house. Our son is so happy with the horse, but now he wants our room. So we give our son and his horse our room. We sleep on the bed in his room, our arms draped over the side, each of us falling onto the floor at some time during the night. The horse is growing, eating buckets of oats, loaves of bread, baskets of apples, and boxes of lettuce and carrots. Let's keep him in the backyard, we say. No, our son answers, you stay in the yard. He mounts his horse and drives us toward the kitchen door. So we go out into the backyard and pitch a tent. It's not so bad, really. We have access to the refrigerator and bathroom in the basement, and we cook on the grill. Our son kicks out the glass in the back windows and throws out the garbage in green plastic bags. The horse raises a hoof. Let me see here. Okay, well, maybe I should read something a little more on the serious side, so you don't just think I'm frivolous and just pretty. You know what I mean? You probably think I'm... So I'm going to move into another part of the book. So this is the lead poem in the middle of the book, which is called The Hole in the Middle. And the poem is called The Hole in the Middle after the middle section. So let's see. It's in the middle of the book. That's why I called it A Hole in the Middle. This is one of the few books where I've actually titled all my sections. Page 39. I'm usually pretty organized about this, but a hole in my middle. There's a hole in my middle. When I walk, the wind tickles my ribs. Spotted butterflies pass through me on their way to Mexico. Birds deposit rings, mud, grass, as though building nests inside me. Children stop me to peek through the hole. I reach inside and pull out tufts of hair, twigs, paper, quarters. I remove broken webs, mounds of acorns, dead flowers, newspaper scraps, old cell phones. I fill in the hole with mud, seal it up. But soon chipmunks and squirrels scratch away the dirt and the hole opens again. I lie down and place a pillow over it, but then my insides grow warm and damp, and I have to open a window. I can hear a funny music inside me and things moving as though someone were rearranging furniture in a room. Since the Bush administration, I've written really a lot of poems, but the Trump administration has really kind of contextualized a lot of pieces I've written. And I don't know that they're direct, but I mean, I don't even want to go into that right now. So anyway, I'll just say that sort of framed a number of pieces I've been writing over the last few years. Certainty. Certainty floats in the air like a noisome odor. You could smell it oozing from the skin, rising from hair follicles. You could hear it sweep the room with its sturdy bristles. It tells you there is only one truth, and what could be more convincing than its calm demeanor, how its words whistle through its lips. It cautions you to beware of the future. It is written, certainty says, but where is it written? If you're smart, it says, you'll keep your mouth shut and lie low. Then some of your troubles might not find you. Certainty comes in a gust of wind. It kicks up the leaves in fall, knocks them down in summer. It catches the dust in its net and pours it over your head. It circulates among your friends, warning them to keep their distance. Certainty backs you into a corner, ripping into your chest with a savage jaw. Soon, you bleed out all your doubts. Kings. I think I want to put one new piece in here, too. Kings. We executed one king because of his murderous ways, dead bodies piled up in the streets as if there had been another plague. We executed another king because he taxed us into oblivion, then took our homes and accounts, our passwords opening into empty cyberspace. We executed another king because he turned our daughters into concubines and our sons into slaves. And we executed another king because we couldn't raise enough livestock, couldn't harvest enough vegetables and grain to satisfy his greed and gluttony. Now, no one wanted to be king, so we decided we would all be kings. We took over the palace and the stores. We held parades in our honor. We issued decrees and created new laws to sustain us. Soon the killing, plundering, and pillaging resumed. Then we executed ourselves. After. I think with all the killing over the last, the children killing, all the shootings, so I wrote this poem as a kind of response to it. After. After the shooting stopped, we held our breath and waited. Smoke filled the holes in the air. Voices entered the doors, and boots clacked on the hard floors. We palpated our numb bodies to discover if we were wounded or dying. Blood pooled around us. You're safe, the voices said. It's over. Some of us rose slowly with our hands reaching out. Some of us crawled toward friends and lay on their still bodies. Some wept or sobbed violently. You're okay now, the voices reassured us, while lights flashed in the windows, sirens calling. Some remained crumpled on the floor, hidden between the bodies, gripping bullet shells in their palms. Some still typed cries for help into their cell phones. Some recorded their own breathing and played it back. I think I'll read a couple more poems. I think I'm going to go back to a few older ones, actually, instead of a newer one. I think I'll go back to a few older ones and maybe give you an idea of some of my work before this. My preceding book, the first poem in the book is called Mud, and it's a direct reference to Hurricane Irene. If you remember, during Hurricane Irene, there was the flash flooding that took out so many towns in Vermont and New Hampshire, actually, and a close friend of Colleen's and mine, Brenda Guerin, the night of the flood, when it started occurring, she called up the fire station, actually, and they said, if the water goes up any higher, go up in the railroad tracks. Well, her place got totally flooded. She's a sculptor, and all her studio, most of it was kind of destroyed. Her place, and the water rose the White River rose maybe 35 or 40 feet into. So, we were over there with a number of other people working day after day, kind of pulling out the insides, gutting the house essentially, taking out all the insulation and everything else because there's so much water damage. But the thing I kind of noticed in walking over there, the mud was so deep from the river that it almost pulled off my not my knee-high, but my ankle-high boots. It was over everything. Her berm, what she called her berm, and her garden, all that was just covered in mud and didn't come in the house. So I wrote a poem called Mud. Out of the river, mud climbed broken embankments, crooked staircases, gleaming hulls, the corpses of cows, the skulls of cars. Out of the river, mud entered our homes, roasted its dinners in our ovens, filled our glasses with gritty wine. At night, it made our beds, tucking sheets and spreading covers. Mud said its prayers and wept for us. It ticked in our clocks. It wore our shoes and socks, plastered our ankles. Mud took over banks, gas stations, the mayor's office. Mud baked our bread. It spoke 1,000 tongues, translated our deepest needs into simple sentences. It filled out our forms, smudging the signature line. When mud wavered, even for a moment, it kneeled in soggy churches, renewed its faith. With its conscience clear, mud mixed its own cocktail and went out to spread the word, its logic impossible to rebut. Mud drove a convoy of trucks, unloading cargoes of itself. Mud dammed the flood. It hired us to work, raking mounds of it into gardens and carrying it in pails. When we looked up, even the sun was mud. And maybe I'll just, what time is it? It's like 10? It's still, I have my trunk of poems in the car. Do you want me to get them? And this goes back to childhood. My mother liked it. No, I'm going to read. I think I'll finish up with, I'm going to start Rosh Hashanah early. I'm going to finish up with a Rosh Hashanah poem. Since, I won't be here to read it to you later, I'll read it to you now. So, let me just say that I live near Dartmouth College, and I kind of feel alienated from the community. That's where the synagogue is. So I don't really go there very much to go to synagogue. And so one Rosh Hashanah, I kind of wrote this poem about that. It's kind of another war poem, actually. But, it is interesting being outside of a community and feeling kind of like not wanting to go because you feel it's too much about that. And I guess there's one thing I should explain in there. Jews for a long time have had this way during Shabbos and during the holidays, they're not supposed to complete a circuit. You're not supposed to, like if you turn the lights on, you're not supposed to turn them off. You're not supposed to conduct any business deals or do anything else. So, one way around that is to have what's called a Shabbos Goy, which is a non-Jewish person carry your keys, your money, and everything else you might need, let's say to go to a movie and have popcorn, or something else. So that's a reference that I have in here, the Shabbos Goy at the end, just in case you didn't know it. So this is Rosh Hashanah. This is a time for reflection, Rabbi Borak says in a mass email. I hold my own service. The moths clinging to the screens pray to get in. The orchids open their lovely legs. At the end of the rows, crows badger each other over hymnals. I cut the chauffeur loose. My dog smells the blast and heads downstairs. What kind of Jew am I? The kind women at cash registers glare at. The kind with scalloped edges and frayed hair, whose voice rises into prophetic zeal over the slightest hint of a problem. I smell simmus, brisket, roasted potatoes, kugel. I smell candles burning and apples dipped in honey 1,000 miles away. No one in the community invites me for dinner. They probably don't even know I'm Jewish. I remember floods, earthquakes, bombings, diseases, deaths, the misery in 2008. Why would anyone argue over their Jewishness? I flick the lights to get God's attention. I draw another glass of wine from the box. I'm my own Shabbos Goy, carrying enough cash to get into a movie and buy some popcorn. This year will be another year of war, just like last year. What should I pray for? A little less blood, another day on earth? I bless my wife, my dog, everyone I love, and everyone I don't love. I do not bless the New Year of Kings. I bless the New Year of New Years, the act of creation. Let's begin again. Thank you. Thank you so much. So are there would people like to ask questions, or did I just exhaust the evening? Yeah.
What is Jewish bling?
Necklaces, the gold chains that I often wear, except for I'm afraid somebody's going to beat me up and take them from me. My mezuzah, which I'm not, my Star of David, other questions. I didn't wear them tonight because, yeah.
The Jewish content of the first things that you read, the humor, kind of the twistiness, like the Helm stories.
Yeah.
It comes through.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I actually, it's strange because that is a huge influence on my work. The metamorphosis with the change into the bug and a lot of the short pieces, So yeah, thank you. Thank both of you. I like that comparison because, I've read so much of that. Rick, did you have a question?
Are there things that you feel like you're able to do in prose that you weren't doing in poetry, and more line poems? Is that part of the reason? Or
Yeah, I think.
offer you a different opportunity to try something?
Yeah, I think, you know, there was an early part of I was kind of a class clown growing up, you know, so, and I think when I first started, you know, my first book, the one that you're more familiar, actually my second book, Scattering the Ashes, I was really like, you know, I thought, well, everything's got to be morbid and people have to look weepy-eyed and maybe even go, oh, you know, as I read the poem. So I was attempting to do that, and I sort of as time went on, I think I wanted, you know, I realized I like to have fun in conversations, and I started trying to get more tones that I had into my work. And, you know, as I was going on, I was kind of finding a way to kind of work the biblical content, the working content, all into the same piece. And I think, I was working at this low residency MFA, which kind of blew up. You know, I taught about 8 years, and so the first one or two pieces I wrote off that at one point were satires, and I think I was meaning to write a collection of short stories that were satirizing what had happened and kind of, but you know, as I began to do that, I wasn't happy with those, and I began to write more and more, and it took a while to sort of articulate these one-paragraph pieces or one-page pieces. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting more, at least at this point in time, I'm getting more of what I want to be saying and talking in a way I want to be talking more in the prose pieces. Then I'm having difficulty going back to the lineated verse right now. You know, I have a book I almost completed, and I've had trouble actually trying to, you know, make myself write a lineated poem. So yeah, I guess I'm right now I feel like it's more about me, you know. So I have another book of these I'm working on too. So, you know, other questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming to the reading and being such a good audience, and thanks for inviting me, Sarah and Bob, and thanks for having the series again, you know, and I think there's like refreshments back there, you know, be careful, have something, don't drink and drive, or drink and drink and walk and leave your car here or something. So anyway, thank you again.